Hi everybody, and welcome to our PRINCE2 or PRINCE2 Agile webinar. It is one of the most popular questions that we get asked here at ILX Group. Which course should I do, PRINCE2 or PRINCE2 Agile? And as you can see, we have our lead trainer, Andy West, on the call with us, who's going to take us through all that information today and hopefully answer all of your questions. And we also have our head of marketing, Rachel First, who has organised everything and is going to be collating your questions at the end. So let me just go through some quick housekeeping with you just before Andy takes over. We will be having the call for around about 45 minutes, where Andy will take us through all the info, and then we'll have 10 to 15 minutes at the end for your questions. So at the right hand of your screen, there should be a questions box. So as we're going through the webinar, please, if you have any questions, enter your questions in that box, and then Rachel will help us at the end in going through those for you. Okay, so you will have joined the call muted, hopefully, and there are quite a lot of us on the call, which is brilliant. So if you could just remain muted throughout the whole of the call, that will be great. And that's just so that we have a quality recording for you, which we are going to send out tomorrow. So you'll get that into your emails tomorrow. And we don't want, obviously, the background noise. So please do keep yourself muted throughout the call. Okay. Social media, please do join us. We have Facebook, Instagram, LinkedIn. Please do join us on our social media platforms so that we can connect with you. There's a host of information on there. So we have blogs, resources, all sorts on there, but it's also an opportunity for us to celebrate with you when you do start your courses with us. So please do join us and follow us on our different platforms. You will have a feedback form that will come up at the end of the webinar. It will only take you a couple of minutes. If you wouldn't mind just completing that for us, that would be great. And that just gives us the opportunity to hear your feedback and also improve as we go on with these sessions, make sure we're getting the right information out to you. All right, Andy, do you want to introduce yourself?
Thank you very much, Terrain.
Welcome.
Hello, everybody. Welcome to the webinar, Andy West. And as the slide says, Senior Trainer Consultant at ILX Group. I've been a PRINCE2 trainer since 2000, a PRINCE2 Agile trainer since it was launched, 2014, 2015. And I also run a number of other courses as well, the Associated Project Management Qualifications and Change, Project Management Control, and Praxis, which is a framework covering projects, programs, and portfolios in one go. So that's who I am. Interestingly, I've been involved in projects for years, but never full-time. I've always had a full-time job, and then I get projects as well. So it's always about trying to balance those elements. But I've been project manager and team manager and senior user and assurance, lots of different roles, different places. What am I going to try and cover today? We're really going to look at PRINCE2 and PRINCE2 Agile, oddly. So what is Prince? What does it consist of? What are the key elements within it? And then how does PRINCE2 Agile differ? So what are the things that are in PRINCE2 Agile that are not in PRINCE2? And then have a go at how to choose delivery options. And we'll have a look at today's offers and finish with questions and answers at the end. Before I dive into PRINCE2 and PRINCE2 Agile, what I thought was probably best is to start looking at, well, what do we mean by Agile in the first place? Agile is also known as iterative development, and it's compared to linear development. Linear, sometimes known as waterfall or traditional. And in a linear build, essentially, having set up the project and getting to work, we go through a series of technical steps, one in order. And so we do the specification. Once we've completed that, got it signed off, then we do the design. When we've done that, we do the build, and so on. And the output from the project goes live at the end. So importantly, in this sort of project, we fix scope and quality. What's in the project and what does finished mean? And then we estimate cost and time. And because they're estimates, they're not perfect. And so one of the classic complaints about this kind of linear and waterfall project is they're always late, they're always over budget. Well, it was only an estimate in the first place, and so it won't be perfect, and it might finish a little bit earlier. The other problem with it is that often you might be moving through those stages. You've done the specification, you've done the design, you're building it, and somebody says, I have a little idea. Well, it means is you have to go back and change a bit of the specification and change the design and start the build again. And so changes in a linear project can be very expensive because you often have to go back and redo some of the things you've done. And therefore your project starts to extend and get more expensive as people start to add changes in. If you want a really big example of how this might happen, the Scottish Assembly building, the Parliament in Edinburgh, that was built 20 or so years ago. The original plan cost for that was £139 million, and it was going to be delivered in 1 year. When the project finished, it cost £400 million and took 3 years. But the project manager was paid their on-time and on-budget bonus. Essentially, every extra pound and every extra day was authorised through the change control process because people add things. So it wasn't late enough a budget. It just got bigger, quite a lot bigger. This was always seen as a problem in software development projects, and this is where the iterative life cycles have come from, is that software development one, where we need to be on time. We want to make sure that these things go on time. So the idea of the iterative life cycles, which is very much where Agile comes from, is to build in an iterative way. So what actually happens is we work in a series of time boxes or sprints. So what we'll start with beforehand is a list of requirements. They're not fully defined. They're prioritized, and what we'll do is we'll take a small chunk of that and we'll design it, build it, test it, and launch it. At the end of that time box, something goes live. And then we repeat. We take a next slice and we do the same thing. And we take another slice as we go through. And essentially, output potentially goes live at each and every time box. And so one of the things to look at here is, what's the right way of doing this particular work? What's the right way of building the output in this particular project? Some outputs lend themselves to being done in an iterative way. Some may be a linear way. And so when we start to look at, do I want to do PRINCE2 or PRINCE2 Agile, one of the things you've got to consider is, what are you creating and what's an appropriate way of doing it? For example, you might argue that building a building, particularly a tower block, may not be best to do as an iterative. You want to design the whole thing and make sure the foundations will support the entire building, and you'll go through on that kind of linear way. Refurbishing a building, on the other hand, you might do in an iterative way. Let's do it floor at a time, room at a time, and go in that kind of iterative way. You'll specify each room, you design it, do it, and go back into use. And what you might then do is only take out a room at a time as you go through. So that's often one of the things you've got to consider when you're looking at what sort of methodology do I want. So I'm going to look at PRINCE2 first. Now you're going, oh, PRINCE2 must be linear. Well, actually, no. PRINCE2 is a project management methodology. It doesn't look at anything about how it's built. It is designed for any output, any size, in any environment, whether it's linear or iterative. It doesn't make any difference to PRINCE2. Essentially, as a project manager, you'll delegate the work, someone will do some work and they'll hand it back, whether that's a linear technical step or whether it's a time box or a sprint. So PRINCE2 is not to be contrasted with kind of linear. It is just a project management methodology. It sits above. And I'll look at how does PRINCE2 Agile differ in a bit. It is the most popular methodology in the world. It's used across all sorts of countries, all sorts of organizations. It provides a framework for an organization to manage all of their projects. Basically made up of 4 parts: principles, themes, processes, and the project environment. And the project environment, this is here, is about flexibility. It's about scaling. It's one of the important things shown throughout the PRINCE2 manual is, how much of this do I need? Now, PRINCE2 is actually an acronym: Projects in Controlled Environments 2. What we want is controlled start, controlled progress, controlled close. And therefore, the thing to ask yourself about this is, how much of this do I need to control the particular nature of this project? And if you have a big, scary project with lots of risk, you might need a lot more of PRINCE2. It's relatively small, it's relatively straightforward, it's relatively low risk. You might use a much lighter touch. And so the important thing here is to scale how much you use. What PRINCE2 doesn't cover is technology. What's being built, how's it being built, whether it's linear or agile. Doesn't look at that at all. Doesn't look at any of the detailed techniques. It offers a couple of techniques, one for planning and one for quality review, how to check things have been fit for purpose. It does nothing about the kind of leadership and teamwork, the soft skills as a project manager. So PRINCE2 doesn't cover everything in project management. What it provides is a framework to be applied to any project, and then you will add in the specific specialist aspects, the detailed techniques that you as an organization want to use. your skills as a leader, building teams, negotiation, communication, all those other skills that are going to make a project work and make you an effective project manager. Importantly, there is a minimum requirement for PRINCE2. If you just said, I'm going to use PRINCE2 and then didn't really use any of it, then it kind of prints in name only, or PINO, which has been done quite a lot. Oh, we're going to use PRINCE2, and you look for it, you go, I can't find it anywhere. So what PRINCE2 says is, as a minimum, you must use something. You must apply the 7 principles, and I'll have a look at what they are in a sec. For each of the themes, the 7 of them, there must be a bit. There must be a little bit of those themes. So a bit of planning and a bit of quality and a bit of a business case. It says you must have processes that satisfy the purpose or objectives of the PRINCE2 processes. Now, the idea of the process model is to indicate where are you in the project, what are you doing, what documentation might you create. And as long as you've got something that provides that kind of framework, then you don't have to use the PRINCE2 processes and all their names and all of the steps that might go into them. It's having the equivalent. I worked with the London Borough a few years ago that simplified the PRINCE2 process model for very small projects. And their process model was plan, do, review. When you look at the detail of what you do in plan, it was 2 of the PRINCE2 processes. When you look at the do, it's more of the PRINCE2 processes. And review is actually closing a project and measuring the benefits afterwards. And they drew it as a triangle. Start with the plan at the bottom to give you a solid foundation, which is a term that PRINCE2 uses quite regularly when it looks at some of its processes. And finally, it says you should use the PRINCE2 recommended techniques or equivalent alternatives. So you don't have to use the planning tool. You don't have to use quality review, but you should use something for planning and should have some way of checking that what's being delivered is fit for purpose. So PRINCE2 is not going to be overly bureaucratic. It must be tailored to suit what's going on. And from the smallest project to the biggest project, it's about how do we use it. So the principles then, well, you have to do these. They're universal, they validate, and they empower your project managers as I do these. So continue business justification. Why are we doing this? Is there a good reason for doing it? Do the benefits of doing this project outweigh the cost and risk? And we should look at it all the way through. And if the answer is no, then we shouldn't do this project or cancel it once it's started. Oddly, we should learn from experience. We should get better as we go through. We should evaluate at the end of each project. We should evaluate at the end of each stage. Can we get better? Kind of learn from experience, which sounds obvious, but of course, it's making sure that we have time, that we've planned to do it. Define roles and responsibilities. Because a project is a temporary structure, have we actually defined what the role and responsibilities are of the people in our project? And of course, if we have a big project, we might have many people doing the same role because we want more people involved. If we have a small project, one person might have more than one role and needs to understand what all those responsibilities are. Manage by stages. Break the project into manageable chunks. Don't try and plan the whole thing in detail at the start, which works for every methodology I've ever seen, because it's just often too far to plan into advance. It's called a planning horizon. How far can I see in the future and plan in detail? The minimum smallest project in PRINCE2 is 2 stages. An initiation stage, planning it, and then everything else, which may suit your project perfectly. But you can have more than that. Manage by exception is about empowerment. When you delegate work to people, delegate them some authority to carry out that work. We should not be directing and micromanaging people. As project managers, we don't have time for that. We will not be, usually, the technical expert on everything being done. Therefore, delegate to them and give them some authority, some flexibility in terms of time, cost, scope, risk. And they manage what they're doing. Similarly, as a project manager, you need the same kind of thing when you're being delegated work by your project board. Focus on the product. Start with the end in mind. What are we delivering? What is the output? Now, these principles will underpin both a normal project, what is the final output at the end of the project, but also sprints or time boxes. What is being delivered in each of the time boxes? In Agile, we'll talk about user stories, and a user story is a way of defining an output. So we have some very similar principles here. And finally, Every project is unique, and therefore how much of this do we need depends on the project. Those principles underpin PRINCE2, whether it's PRINCE2 itself or PRINCE2 Agile, and they work in both circumstances. Is this worthwhile? Can we get better as we go through? And so when we look at some of the Agile things a bit later on, you'll see some very similar kind of underpinning principles. The themes. The themes are the building blocks of project management. If you've worked in a project, even if it's not a PRINCE2 project, you have done some, if not all, of these 7 themes. If the principles are what you have to do, the themes are how you do it. Again, what's important is, how much of this do I need? Is this a big complicated project or a relatively straightforward one? So 7 themes. Business case, links back to business justification. What's the content of a business case? When's the business case going to be created? When's it should be updated? How does it link into benefit realization, and how to ensure that benefits are actually being measured? Organization looks at the roles and responsibilities and will define a number of roles in the PRINCE2 organization structure, from those roles on a project board who own the project and make the key decisions, to the role of project manager running the day-to-day, and then team managers, the people in charge of the people actually doing the work. Now, on a small project, you might find that the project manager is also the team manager. We don't need an additional person. The project manager can run the team directly. On a bigger project, or a project where you don't have the technical skills, it may be better to delegate to a team manager who would then delegate to their particular team. We also have a role for project support, which is about the administration and management of the project. Again, on a small project, as the project manager, you'll probably be doing this. On a big project, you might have some help because there's a lot of administration and management to be looked after. One final role, which is project assurance, which is a kind of audit role. It's the way that the project board, the owners of the project, check that they're being told the truth. It's not optional. Either they do it themselves and they'll double check that what you're telling them is accurate, or they'll appoint other people to check on their behalf. What this means is that the project board have confidence in what they're being told and therefore can make quicker decisions. They don't need to look through all the detail if somebody else has checked it for them. It's making sure that it's all fit for purpose. Quality is about 2 things: product quality and process quality. It's the discipline of ensuring that the outputs and the processes by which they're created meet the needs of your customer. Have we built the right thing in the right way? The themes of plans looks at calculating the overall time scale and cost. When you look at this, it is about identifying outputs. It is about ensuring that you've identified appropriate activities, if that's the sort of plan you're going to do, certainly to estimate the scale of the work you're going to do, whether this is a linear project or an agile project. It's about estimating. It's about prioritizing the work to make sure that you're focusing on the most important things as you go through. It allows you to present that information to a senior management to get their commitment. And as you're doing that, managing risk. Risk is about uncertainty. And all projects, because you're doing something new or something different, have lots of uncertainty. And therefore, it's important we identify that uncertainty, score it so we can work out which are the most important ones, and then manage them appropriately. Can I reduce them? Can I avoid them? Can I put some kind of fallback in place that if they occur, we can do that? And this, of course, will add things, activities, time to your plan. In a linear project, it will add additional activities. In an agile project, it may well mean that we can't do all the work we intend to because some of our time is spent managing risk. So it's important to identify those and make sure they've been picked up. And then the themes. Well, change control. I mentioned it earlier on. Importantly, you will always need a change control process and a way of recognizing the versions in your own project. Once your customers have defined their requirements, they're in the process of changing their mind. And therefore we need a system to actually capture those, analyze those, and then have them approved, rejected, or deferred. And finally, the theme of progress. Where are we now? Where are we going? Should we carry on? This is about whether the project is under control or out of control. I talked earlier on about management by exception. providing people some authority, empowering them. In progress, we use the term tolerances. A tolerance is an acceptable deviation from the plan. And in a PRINCE2 project, you can have tolerances for time, cost, quality, scope, risk, benefits. The classic two, of course, are time and cost. We can finish a bit late, we can finish early, we can finish a bit over budget, under budget. It's making sure that it's under control. The tolerances for the project as a whole are delegated to the owners of the project board. They will then delegate stage tolerances to the project manager, so you can run a stage at a time in the project. And when you delegate a work package to the teams to do some work, you must delegate them some tolerance so that they have some day-to-day control over what they're doing. It's always about empowerment. So they can do the work, they can make some small adjustments and hopefully finish the work and pass the product back, which you then add into the rest of the project as you go through. How much of these themes you require depends on the size of the project. If it's a small, fairly straightforward project, you might find the plans quite straightforward. It's a simple Gantt chart, and risk, it's a simple risk register with all the details of the risks you've got. But if you have a huge project, then there may be high-level project plans, there'll be detailed stage plans, there'll be detailed plans for each of the work packages. There'll be lots of risk, and you'll be having perhaps a specialist help you in your support function, a risk manager who's going to keep an eye on what's going on. But it's about how much is appropriate. How do I control this project? The processes then. Now, I mentioned this earlier on. This is about where we are in the project. And what should we be doing? In terms of PRINCE2, the process model, 7 processes again. It's about where am I, what principles need to be done, the what, and then how do I do them, the themes. It's making sure we have the right information and we write it down on the documentation, the management product suggested by PRINCE2. There's one process for the project board, the owners of the project. It's called directing a project. And whenever you need a decision, you refer up to them, they'll make a decision and trigger the next piece of action. There's one process at the bottom, delivering, managing product delivery. This is where products, the outputs, are actually created. And in the middle, the managing bit, this is the bit for the project manager. Control start, control progress, control close. Control start is in 2 processes. Starting up a project, as it says here on the slide, pre-project. It's a quick check. Is there a viable project? And what is that project about? It's checking that the benefits of doing this project outweigh the cost and risk of doing so. It will start to define the scope of the project. What's in the project, what's not. It will look at the acceptance criteria. What does finished mean? It will plan the first stage of the project, the initiation stage. And that information will go to the project board and direct to go, would you like to start the project? If they say no, it's not worthwhile, then we cancel the project before we waste any time and money on it. If they say yes, we move into the initiation stage. Now, the initiation stage has 2 processes, initiating a project and managing a stage boundary. Initiating a project is where we plan the project in detail. How are we going to manage this project? And so it identifies the processes we're going to follow, any rules, regulations, and standards we have to adhere to, and the development process is defined. It will define the entire project and give you a high-level project plan for all the stages. And that will go up to the project board and say, will you authorize this project? Are you happy this defines your project and how you want me to run it? To move into some actual work, we'll then use managing stage boundary to plan the next stage. And that will go up to the project board and go, will you give me the money for the next stage? And assuming everything is fine, they'll say yes, and you'll move into the next stage. Controlling a stage is the day-to-day work of the project manager. Essentially what you're going to do is delegate work to your teams. In PRINCE2, this is called a work package. It's a piece of work. The team will accept the work in managing product delivery. They'll do the work, they'll hand it back, and you'll then do another work package. Work goes out, work is done, work comes back. You'll do reporting to your project board to keep them in line. You'll pick up risks and issues and changes and deal with them, sometimes taking advice from the project board. And at the end of the stage, use managing stage boundaries again to plan the next stage, update the business case, ask the project board for approval, and assuming everything is still fine, they'll say yes, and you'll repeat, controlling a stage. delegating work to managing product delivery, getting work back, doing the reporting. And you just repeat those for as number of stages you have. Last stage then, in controlling a stage, doing the work of the project, delegating the work to your teams, getting work done, getting it back, doing reporting to the board. As we come towards the end of the stage, we don't have another stage to plan. So instead of managing stage boundaries, we'll use closing a project. Now, in a linear project, this is where you'd hand over the final output, the work of the project's been done. If this is an agile project, then most of those things have been handed over already, and this is just the final output. But importantly, it's where we do the final evaluation of the project. It's where we close the project budget. It's where we disband the team and notify all the stakeholders this project is finished. And that'll go to our project board for approval, and they'll say, yes, thank you very much. And then after the project, clearly measuring benefits, making sure that the change has actually been implemented. This is the basic process model for Prince2. Those are the themes for Prince2. When we start to look at Prince2 Agile, all of those things are still there. We still have the principles. We still have the themes. We still have the process model. What we also have essentially is some guidance on the Agile development approach. How does it work? Why does it work? Guidance on how to blend Agile development techniques into a normal project. Remember, Prince2 is not linear. Prince2 just says we will delegate the work, we'll monitor the work, we'll get the work back. This could be a technical stage. I could ask you to do the design. When you've done the design, I'll take it back and we'll start to then use it to build. Or it could be it's a time box or a sprint. And we will agree the backlog for that particular sprint. And you will then work on it. And at the end of it, you'll hand back a product which will go live immediately or potentially go live immediately. And anything you haven't done will be back in the backlog, and we'll then look at that for the next one. What Prince2 Agile does provide is some guidance on Agile concepts, some Agile techniques, the behaviours we might expect in an Agile team, and some frameworks, some Agile frameworks we might consider. It is to allow the project manager to understand the Agile environment. Prince2 Agile is not trying to make the project manager an Agile development specialist. It's not going to put you in the team and go, you are a developer. It allows you to, as a project manager, to understand the needs of your development team. What information do they need? How are they going to work? How might they report to you? What's a more agile way, if you like, of reporting what's going on in terms of that? So it's to look at those kind of elements. So it is just a tailored approach to Prince2. Originally, when Prince2 Agile was first launched, you had to have done Prince2 in itself, and it was an add-on. Now you can choose to do Prince2 Foundation and Practitioner, or Prince2 Agile Foundation and Practitioner. Or if you've already done Prince2 Foundation and or Practitioner, you could just add the Prince2 Agile Practitioner on top. So it's not a completely new method. It still has the same elements. It's looking at some of these additional things that you need to understand as a project manager to ensure that you're enabling your team to work in an agile way. So some concepts that I talked about. Prioritizing what's delivered. Now, Prince2 already has this, tolerances for scope. Particularly here, we might talk about a technique, Moscow. Must, should, could, won't. In an agile project, you're guaranteed to deliver the musts. But the shoulds and the coulds give you flexibility. We hope to do these as well. But if things don't go as we hoped for in the first place, we have some flexibility. And importantly, it says time focused. In a Prince2 Agile project, cost and time are fixed. And therefore we have to flex something else. Scope and quality, what we can do. And importantly, not delivering everything. So when you start to look at the scope of an Agile project, we have a long list of things. But the idea is, if we have to, if we're going to fix cost and time, we can drop these things out. These are the less important things. And when you start to look at a long list of requirements from a customer, often the things at the bottom take a lot of resource to deliver, but may not deliver as much benefit as they might, or they may not be some kind of value to them. So if we drop them out of the project, they might not actually affect the business case. Differentiate between scope and quality. This is an important one. Taking something out of scope doesn't drop quality. So scope is how big something is. Whereas quality is, does it work to the expected degree? Does it do what it's supposed to? If you want a rather odd thought process about scope and quality and the difference between them, think about the washing machine you have at home. How many functions does it have? Well, it's like mine, 17, and 6 different temperature settings and 5 different spin speeds. So the scope of what my washing machine is these 17 functions with all of these different kind of combinations. Quality is, if I pick one, how long is it going to take? What temperature is it? What spin speed? Does it do what it's supposed to? Does it follow those instructions? If you think about the washing machine you have at home, if you have 17 functions like me, how many do you actually use? If they delivered it on time and it only did the 3 things, the 3 functions you actually use, would it still be acceptable? Yes. Working iteratively and incrementally, rather than building one solution and having it out at the end, it's about defining things as you go and adding to them. A simple example here might be, we want to build a website. Now we could do it in a linear way. We could define all the pages we want of a website. We go away, we specify them, we design them and build them. We could say, here's a long list of all the pages we think we want. When you take the most important ones, we do those first. And those can go live. And then we work on the next group of pages and we can add to those. And importantly, inspect and adapt as we go through. In an Agile project, we're going to embrace change because we haven't defined everything up front. If somebody says, oh, I've got an idea, you can put it in the backlog and just go, I'll add this. Even within a time box inside a sprint, they'll have must, shoulds, and coulds. If they think of an idea of how to improve the output, the musts, then the team can add that in as long as they can drop something out to pay for it. So they don't get any more time and money. Changes are always paid for by substitution. We'll take something out. What's less important? And so we're going to embrace change. We're going to inspect things. We're going to adapt things. We're going to improve things as we go forward. Of course, that gives us the ability to improve the product, not just over the life of the project, we've added some things, but within a time box, so that things can be better at the end of each one. And therefore, the customer often gets much closer to what they originally wanted, but hadn't managed to sometimes express as clearly as it might. So those are the kind of concepts we might work through. In terms of behaviors, now Prince2 doesn't do anything about leadership and teamwork and people behavior. But when you're working in an agile way, it's quite important we start to think about these kind of behaviors because it's encouraging the team to work in an appropriate way. So transparency. Can everybody see what's going on? Does everybody have the same access to the same information? And particularly when we work in an agile way, you'll hear talk of a daily stand-up or a daily scrum, which essentially is a team meeting. What did I do yesterday? What am I going to do today? What might get in the way? Potential blockers and risks. And the purpose of that is transparency. Everyone can see what work has been done and what's going to happen next. And it then bumps into collaboration. The blockers. What might I need help with? Where might I need somebody else in the team to work with me? And there's an absolute focus on this. Now, it's not to say that in Prince2 project, you don't want transparency and collaboration, but it's not formally mentioned. Whereas in Prince2 Agile, it is in there because this underpins how Agile teams work. Rich communication. Face-to-face, go and talk to people is the most effective way of getting communication across to make sure that what you've said has been understood by the other party. Writing lots of documents may be the least effective way of sharing information. So in an agile project, we look for often these kind of low-tech, simplistic ones. There's an assumption the team is co-located and therefore daily stand-ups. We go and talk to each other, 15 minutes. We go and talk to the people we want. We've embedded somebody in the team to answer those sorts of questions. If we have to document things, diagrams, pictures, visualizations, rather than lots and lots of words. Now, quite frankly, I think that works on all projects. It's a much better way forward. But again, it's not explicit in Prince2, but in Prince2 Agile, it needs to be because it supports the Agile way of working. Self-organization, that when we delegate to the team, we don't tell, we don't command and control. It's not about being directive. And again, Prince2 never has been. There's often an assumption that sure, it's linear. It's not. The project manager delegates the work to the team manager and or the team at the same time, and it's for the team to plan that work and come up with the details. So in a standard project, it's how long will it take and how much will it cost if you want one of these. On an Agile project, it's here's the time, you are the cost, how much work do you think you can do in here? It's about getting that agreement, commitment. And the project manager is not going to detail how they want those things done. Of course, as a project manager, you may never have been a technical expert, in which case you would have to let the team to self-organize. And exploration, innovation, trying things. What we want in Agile projects, and you might say in all projects, is that the team building the product have an open mind. Is there a better way? Are we learning something? And so the idea of retrospectives, evaluation sessions, all about learn from experience is part of the Agile behaviors. Again, in a normal project, you would expect this as well. Formally not mentioned in the PRINCE2 manual because it doesn't look at the people and leadership stuff. But we add those in because of the nature of the Agile environment. And some techniques. User stories. A user story is a way of defining requirements written by the users, particularly on behalf of the users, by a role called a product owner in generic Agile. PRINCE2 Agile calls this role the customer subject matter expert. They're embedded in the team at a detailed level to define the requirements, the things that are going to be built in a sprint or a time box. And this allows the team to work on what's going on and to talk to that subject matter expert about what it actually means and how it's going to work, and to come with an agreement set of quality criteria. How do we measure that we deliver the right thing? Burn charts. There's burn down, burn up. But basically, they're showing the velocity of work. How much work are we doing? They become a very visual way of showing what work has been done, and essentially what work is left. Retrospectives, review sessions, learning from experience. At the end of every sprint or time box, there should be a retrospective. What have we done? What do we do well? What will we do better next time round? And it would feed into the next time box or sprint. In PRINCE2, we do that at the end of every stage. We do it at the end of the project. And those things would still happen. We're just making sure that it happens at the end of every piece of work that a team has done. And importantly, in a PRINCE2 Agile project, we assume that it's the same team, stable, all through the life of the project, doing each of these iterative pieces of work. A sprint or a time box is a fixed period of time. And in an Agile project, planning at a high level is, well, how long are our time boxes or sprints? In IT, software development, these are often 2 to 4 weeks. But if you're using Agile in a non-software environment, it may be longer. But essentially, you fix the time and you fix the team. Essentially, it fixes your costs. It's how many iterations we're going to do. If we're going to do 4-week sprints, 4-week time boxes, we're doing 5 sprints, 10 sprints, 20 sprints. It will give me the lifetime of the project. How long is the project going to be? An information radiator, a kind of low-tech way of sharing information about progress. Traditionally, this was a big whiteboard on the wall with things like the burn charts and maybe a Kanban board of what work has been done and where is it in the process and what the team rules and what issues or risks have come up. Clearly, this can now be done online and you can share the information. But the idea is that the team has that available. They can all see it and it's part of that transparency. We can see what's going on. And that can then be shared with the project manager and other stakeholders. So as a project manager, it's having their own big whiteboard of your own, electronic or otherwise, where you can collect all of the information for each of the teams and summarize those and share that with other people. So there's a number of these techniques, and there's a number more that we can pick up, some examples here. Importantly, in PRINCE2 Agile, we specifically look at 3 Agile frameworks. There are many more, but these 3 frameworks can be used in an IT and a non-IT environment. There are a number of IT-only Agile frameworks, such as SAFe, XP, DevOps, but PRINCE2 is aimed at any product of any size in any environment. And so PRINCE2 Agile follows the same premise. Scrum looks at the use of sprints, it looks at sprint planning, the role of the Scrum Master as a way of facilitating the team in both the planning and the reviews that hold out in the project. Kanban works on a more process level. and looks at it like a constant process flow of work, very akin to working on a production line. And it's about having things in the hopper and feeding things in, the most important things first. And it's how long will they take to go through the Kanban. So look at lead times in Kanban rather than necessarily the size of the piece of work you're going to do. But it gives an interesting way of feeding work in and making sure that we've got the right amount of work. So the idea of Kanban is we have a series of user stories. And as we start to use those up, we do more and just keep feeding them in. Lean Startup is particularly useful when you're starting to look at what does that customer actually know? What is it they want? And if you're on a particularly exploratory type of Agile project, the customer doesn't really know what they want. Or we've had an idea, but we don't know if the customer particularly want it. Lean Startup links to entrepreneurship. And one of the basic principles is fail fast, learn quicker. And so what you might do is create something to see if the customer actually wants it. It may not be a fully working product, but it's something that allows you to learn. And therefore you can measure their reactions and see, is this something they wanted? Yes or no? And if no, to do something else. So what's best for you? Well, as I said earlier on, it's about what you're creating in your workspace. What kind of a products have we got? Can they be built in an iterative way, or in that kind of incremental way? What's appropriate? Now, what Prince2 Agile says is, Agile is not a kind of binary thing. It's how agile can you be? And it may well be that you can be very agile, in which case, Prince2 Agile will be perfectly appropriate for you. It might be less agile than that, or you might go firmly, it's a much more linear one. It's something that can only be built in one big lump, and it's got to go live in one big lump at the end. And so when you start to look at this, Prince2 says it's for any output, any size, and any environment. It's tailorable for framework for all of your projects, whatever they are. And that includes how you're building it. Prince2 Agile, any output, any size, specifically working for an agile environment, more or less. Tailorable framework for your projects with outputs has been created in an agile to help you as the project manager understand the needs of the agile team, what sort of things they're going to report on, what sort of tools and techniques they might use. What kind of behaviors might we need to encourage a team to be more agile? As a quick example, a few years ago, I got involved in a heated discussion on LinkedIn about whether a billing system could be built in an agile way, or did it have to be lean? And somebody was arguing, well, no, you'd only go live with the billing system if it covered all of your products and all of your customers. And somebody else was saying, well, surely you could go for, let's do the small things first and test it on little customers where if we make a mistake, we can recover it quite quickly. We wouldn't want to impose something that doesn't work on our big customers covering all of the products. We could build it up from there. Of course, the answer is both of those are true. My contribution to the argument was, well, why not build it in an agile way? You do it as a series of iterative things, but rather than launch it, you put them into a staging area. And therefore, you can run a test. Does it work? Does it do what we want? We might even run a quick pilot somewhere. And then we build next to it and we add to it. And we only go live at the very end. We've built it in an agile way, but we've launched it in a linear way only when it covers all of our customers and all of the products that we sell. And that perhaps is the more important thing of, how agile can we be? And it may well be that you can be very agile, Prince2 Agile, or even a bit agile, and Prince2 Agile will work for you. If you know it's not going to be, then perhaps Prince2 Agile or Prince2 itself is for you. Specifically, the purpose of Prince2 Agile when it was launched was for those organizations who already use Prince2 and wish to become more agile to add in that kind of guidance. Or organizations who use Prince2 and are using suppliers who use agile techniques, and they need to understand and control the actions of those contractors. Or organizations want to adopt a formal standard for using agile in a Prince2 context. That's what it was always written. Of course, now you could start with Prince2 Agile. We go, well, as an organization, we want to be, but do we understand it? How have we got buy-in to this? And it's, what's going to work for us? The benefits of both of these are, as a project manager, they give you a structure to work to. Essentially, they give you a checklist. What sort of documentation should we use? How should we do this? The link to best practice of here's the way of doing risk, here's a way of doing change control. And therefore gives you confidence that what you're doing as a project manager is actually appropriate. Why might your organization want this? Well, if every project manager is using PRINCE2 or PRINCE2 Agile, what you have is consistency. It's much easier to move lessons from one project to another because we're using the same basic structure, the same language. That does, of course, mean that reporting becomes much easier because we can now take the reporting from multiple projects and add them together and report onwards. And the important thing here is scalability. And if you look at PRINCE2 Agile, have Agile, our agility as well. Is this a project where we can be very agile or a project where we might be less agile? Importantly, PRINCE2 or PRINCE2 Agile aren't everything you need to know. They are project management, but project management is not PRINCE2. There are other things you need to add to this as you go through it. So think of this as a stepping stone. It's a structure. It's a way of working. It's about consistency and repeatability. It's about getting better as you go through, whether it's the standard one or whether you want to work in a more agile environment. Tremaine?
Thank you, Andy. Let's see if I can bring myself back up. That was excellent. Thank you. I'm sure that was full of some useful information for you guys. And it'll help you make your decision which one you want to do, PRINCE2 or PRINCE2 Agile. Andy, brilliant. Thank you. You've got a few more minutes just to get your questions in, whilst I just go through the different ways that you can actually study your PRINCE2 qualification if you want to study with us here at ILX Group. So we have the online course, and you can do both PRINCE2 or PRINCE2 Agile, and you can even do a bundle of both of them together. If you've studied your PRINCE2 already, you can just do your PRINCE2 Agile Practitioner. That's all available as an online course for you. And it is a self-paced course, so you set your own study schedule and you decide as and when you want to log in, go through the different modules and complete some activities just to keep you engaged. And if that's something that you want some more information about, that is all available on our website. We also have a virtual and the classroom course. Now this is 5 full days, so you're with our tutors. Andy West is one of our tutors, and it'll be very similar to the virtual course, what you've heard today. So you will go through that training with your tutor. It will be taught for you and you'll be in groups. The virtual course is a little different, so it's quite similar to this platform here where you'll be online, able to be in different groups with do breakouts and things like that and different activities. And then you've got the classroom course, which will be at one of our physical locations. But both are virtual and classroom, they're both 5 full days for you. And then you've got the best of both worlds. So you've got the blended course. The foundation level is self-paced and online. So you learn that foundation course thoroughly before taking your exam. And then you progress over to your practitioner, which is a 2-day virtual course with one of our tutors. You can actually do a classroom course as well for the practitioner level if you want to, if that's better for you. Okay, so that's all the different ways you can study. If you're still not sure and you need a little bit more information, do go onto our website because we do have some guys on chat who will be able to answer some questions for you there as well. But whilst we've got Andy on the line, if there's anything you need to know pressing, please do put your questions in that question box. We love a discount. So we've got some discounts available on our website. So we've got 30% off all your online bundles. So your PRINCE2, PRINCE2 Agile Plus packs are all online, and you'll get some 30% off that. 20% off your virtual and your blended courses, and 15% off your classroom courses. Now you can access these discounts on both ilxgroup.com website and your prince2.com website as well. And you don't need to memorize them because all the discount codes are going to be in the baskets for you when you add your course to the basket and choose which one you want to enroll on. Okay, hopefully we've got some questions in for you, Andy. Rachel, I'm going to hand over to you.
Hi guys, thanks. We have got loads of questions coming in.
That's great.
Guys, I've got a bit of time.
Off we go.
I'm going to start from the beginning. So some people pop these questions in early on when you started the presentation, and they've had a load more coming through now as well. So let's start with the first one. For someone new to project management, should I start with PRINCE2 Foundation? Andy?
I think it's a good place to start. Absolutely. It will give you a framework to work to. If your organization is not working in an agile way, just focusing on the standard PRINCE2 Foundation is probably less to have to do in one big lump at the start.
Perfect, thank you. Tremaine, you touched on this when you were talking through the different options. So the next person has asked, I've seen a course offered that is Prince2 and Agile combined. Is this a good idea, or should I pick one or the other? Ultimately, I'm doing this to further my career and don't have a specific industry that I'm aligned to, so I want to be as open as possible. Thank you.
Yeah, so as I said, we do have the Prince2 and the Prince2 Agile Plus pack on the website. If you're not sure where to find it, just go onto the chat and the guys can just send you the link. But it gives you both your Prince2, so your foundation and practitioner, and then your Prince2 Agile practitioner are all included in the one pack, along with all your manuals and your exams and all your tutor support and everything like that is included. So even if you do an online course, your tutors are still available, so Andy would still be somebody that would support you, and there are exam workshops available as well with the online.
Cool, thank you. So this question obviously came up early on in the conversation. So Andy, the question, managed by exception, is this linked with delegation?
It is, absolutely. When you're delegating work, you should always delegate some authority to the person you've delegated the work to. If you don't delegate some tolerances, then you'll end up micromanaging, because the moment they fall off the plan line, then essentially they're out of control. And as your plans are based on estimates, that means you'll be getting involved every day. So quite simply, management by exception is you have to empower your teams. And this is fundamental to Prince2 and is kind of equally important, if not more fundamental, in an Agile one, which is the teams have to be empowered. And quite frankly, as a project manager, I've very rarely been the technical expert of everything my team is doing. And therefore, what I'm going to do is delegate to the team and give them some authority so they can fix all those little small problems. And they only get involved. It's a big thing that they can't get involved in. They want a bit more direction. And so, yes, absolutely, delegation and management by exception are absolutely linked. But it's about delegating authority so that they don't have to report immediately there's a small deviation from plan.
Sure, thank you, Andy. So I have a couple of questions about this. I might have missed Tremaine's bit at the beginning. Is the session being recorded? Yes, the session is being recorded. There'll be a follow-up email going out, I believe, on Wednesday this week, which will contain the link to the recording on YouTube. So you'll be able to access it again. You'll be able to share it with any colleagues that want to have a watch, or if you miss part of it, then you can go and watch again. So sorry, I just thought I'd interrupt for that useful. Continue with the questions now. So next, Tremaine, I've done Prince2 Foundation. Can I do Prince2 Practitioner, Prince2 Agile Practitioner?
Yes, it does depend on when you passed your Prince2 Foundation. So as long as you passed your Prince2 Foundation after 2009, you can go on to the Prince2 Agile Practitioner. You will need your manual with that, so make sure you add it in the basket, and you can do that online, virtually, or via Classroom with us.
Perfect, thank you. Next question, as a team member, is it necessary to do Prince2 Agile?
No. If you're a team member working in a technical role, then it's about working in that technical role. If you are intending to become the team manager or a project manager in the future, it may provide some useful understanding, underpinning of what you're going to do and how you're going to do it. In that you could use the framework that Prince2 uses for delegating work to a team as delegating work to individuals within your team if you wanted to.
Cool, thank you, Andy. Another question for you. Is there a maximum number of time boxes?
No, is the simple answer. Agile itself was identified or created in the business as usual environment. So having got an app on your phone, they then set up an Agile team who did updates to it, which is why every 2 weeks, every month, there's an update to some of those apps on your phone. And they'll just keep doing it until they've run out of ideas about how to improve that particular app. And it was always working on the most important things. So in a project environment, it's really about how many iterations do we want to fund up front. And so there is a kind of expectation at the end of the project, you may not have done all of the requirements within that long list of ideas. And therefore, at the end of the project, you might hand those over to a team who carry on doing some of that work in the future, kind of ongoing updates.
Great, thank you. Right, next question. Thanks for your presentation. I'm new to Prince2, however. I got I'm new to Prince2, however, I got my PMP earlier this year. I plan to migrate to the UK later this year. Do you advise I concentrate on Prince2 or Prince2 Agile based on job demand and opportunities?
Oh, that's a difficult question. I'm not sure is the best answer to that about what jobs are mostly going. If you have PMP, then you may well find if you're applying to American organizations here in the UK, they're going to look for PMP. If you're looking for more UK-based organizations, then they may well ask about Prince2. If there's a good HR department, they should understand the overlap between them. About what's going on. I suspect if you join an organization that uses Prince2, then it would be useful to do the Prince2 course once you're in on board, because they'll then give you the kind of familiar language and understanding that your new colleagues will have. But good luck looking for a job.
Thank you. Next question, probably for Tremaine. I'm already on the Prince2 course. Would I be able to add Agile to it at a later stage?
Yes, most certainly. You can do your Prince2 Agile practitioner at a later stage if you want to, if you're already doing your Prince2. That's not a problem. Just get in touch with us and we'll help you get you set up with that.
That's great, thank you. Next question, probably for Andy. Is it true that Prince2 is solely used in the UK? How useful these certificates can be for me, as I'm not sure on landing a job in the UK, but somewhere else in Europe?
It is. It's been used in something like 120 countries around the world. I delivered a Prince2 course in India in 2003, and I'm sure lots more have been delivered since. There are American organizations that have picked up Prince2, so it's often an organizational choice. So the manual is available in something like 7, 8 different languages. Tremaine, do you have better knowledge on that? So it's certainly available. It's certainly available in Polish, German, I think French. I think it's been translated into Mandarin Chinese. So there are quite a number of different places where Prince2 is used, and it's about having that framework, that consistency with an organization. That's what's particularly there. So yeah, it is used all over the world.
I would also add at this point that we have Prince2 and Prince2 Agile available in German. So our e-learning is available in German. We have a lot of customers in Germany, so definitely used in Europe. Next question, they're still coming in. Within the process model, where would change be considered within the cycle?
If we talk about change control, you define it at the start of the project in terms of the initiation stage, how we're going to do it. But then often the project manager in controlling a stage would be in a normal Prince2 project, be picking all the changes coming with something to the project manager who carry out the analysis and then get them approved or changed. In a Prince2 Agile one, then changes will be coming into the project manager, but also maybe directly identified by the team in managing product delivery, and they would be able to implement changes within a sprint or a time box, assuming that they have the flexibility to do so. As I said before, they can only implement a change if they can add it in and take something out, so that they can still finish their time box on time to budget. But so it's generally it's in that kind of day-to-day stuff. Controlling a stage and managing product delivery is where changes generally occur.
Perfect, thank you. Next question. If doing an Agile course or Prince2 Agile course, how much content overlaps with the Prince2 course? So basically, how much content overlap is there between Prince2 and Prince2 Agile?
All of Prince2 has to be known in order to do Prince2 Agile. You have to understand the basic Prince2 framework, methods, and things. The questions in the exam will focus more on the tailoring of Prince2, so that it's how do we use Prince2 in this particular Agile environment, both in the foundation and particularly the practitioner will focus on those kind of areas. But you do need a good understanding of Prince2 in order to kind of understand what do we need to adjust and what do we need to add in this Agile environment.
Great, and actually that follows on to the next question then, which is it appropriate to study only Prince2 Agile, or is it recommended to complete Prince2 first as a prerequisite?
If you can quite happily go in straight away. So originally it was written as an addition that you, having done the Prince2 foundation practitioner, you then could add a Prince2 Agile practitioner. But if your organization already works in an Agile way and you're looking at just making sure that you've got that kind of structural Prince2 elements in place, to help the project managers, then you could just start with PRINCE2 Agile Foundation and do the practitioner afterwards.
Cool. And I think, so Tremaine, correct me if I'm wrong, but if someone is completely new to project management and PRINCE2, then we would usually recommend you doing PRINCE2 Foundation before doing PRINCE2 Agile.
Exactly, at least the PRINCE2 Foundation, so that you understand the methodology, you understand the theory before you do your PRINCE2 Agile, because whilst, and Andy will know this better, I think they offer a summary of the PRINCE2 methodology and PRINCE2 Agile, but really you want to know that foundation theory before you then try and apply it in an Agile environment. Otherwise it gets a little bit tricky and a little bit more difficult for you to succeed at it.
Yeah, if you're doing the PRINCE2 Agile Foundation, there is a lot to study in 3 days, because you've got to understand PRINCE2 and you've got to understand the Agile variations of it. So there's quite a lot of pre-course on that. If you did the PRINCE2 Agile course and understood it, you probably find it much easier to add the Agile information afterwards.
Yeah.
Okay.
Next question, nice easy one. Will there be a book as a reference when studying for the PRINCE2 Agile? Jermaine?
Yes, you've got your manual. So any of the foundation levels that you do, your manual's included. And if you are doing a practitioner level on its own, so maybe you've already studied your PRINCE2 Foundation and you're doing PRINCE2 Agile Practitioner, just make sure you add your manual to the box. Equally with PRINCE2, your manual's included as well with your foundation levels. And you need them, the practitioner levels.
Absolutely.
Yeah. Yeah, the practitioner exams are both open book, aren't they? So you will need the manual. So I think we've already answered this question. Can I do PRINCE2 Foundation and then go ahead to do the PRINCE2 Agile Practitioner level? So we have already answered, and that's a yes. Definitely.
That's definitely a yes.
Resounding yes. Yeah.
Excellent. Right. So Andy, I think this one's for you. Can one project start as PRINCE2 and later on run into PRINCE2 Agile? Is there any justification for this?
Yes, it could, and it could go the other way around as well. You start as PRINCE2 Agile, then it turns into linear. And what you'll find then is that in some projects, some of your work streams might be Agile, and some of your work streams might be in a more linear way. And so it's understanding the basic framework. You'd use the same tools as the project manager, you would delegate a work package, but if you've got team work in a linear way, then you would define the scope of the quality up front, and they would estimate cost and time. If you're delegating work to an Agile team, then you would fix the time and the cost, the size of the team, and then be down to the team to define how much work could they do in that particular sprint or time box. So you will find that there are hybrid projects where they're doing bits of both, or it may be that you do the development originally to build a solution, and then you roll out in a more linear way, a kind of big implementation done in tranches.
Oh, thank you.
I think real life is much more messy than the manuals ever make it up to be.
Yeah. Next question. Can one move from a standard non-management job to a project management job just by doing a PRINCE2 certification?
That will be a challenge for you as an individual. Often what people do is they work in a project team first to get some project management experience or some project experience and perhaps team leadership experience, and then move into a project management role. If your organization is not providing those opportunities, one of the things to consider is volunteer work. Could I go and do some of these things in my own time and build up some of those leadership skills? But when you're building a CV, they're not just looking at what you've done at work, they're often looking at what you've done elsewhere. One of my neighbors, interestingly, has done both PRINCE2 and PRINCE2 Agile with us, but he has little opportunity, and the projects in his organization are very long and slow. And so it's difficult to build lots of experience. But he's captain of a rugby team, and therefore involved in lots of the kind of events and things that the rugby team do, because as captain he has to represent the players, and therefore, and currently I think his team are doing refurbishment of all of their changing rooms, and therefore he's acting in a kind of consultative role. He's kind of doing a bit of senior user and a bit of kind of project management to make sure that the rugby club has some control over the contractor doing the work. So it's not work related, but he's doing it and it's going to be useful experience. He's getting involved kind of as a volunteer. So if you haven't got the experience, think about things outside work where you could go and be a project manager or be a team leader, and that becomes very powerful things on your CV when you're looking for jobs as a project manager in the future.
Yeah, thank you. Thanks. Yeah, I think also to say we can't guarantee that doing a Prince2 certification will get you a new job, but
No.
you know, it's always good to have qualifications, certifications on your CV. And Prince2 is one of the most recognised project management frameworks in the world, so you definitely can't go wrong.
Just to add as well, the Prince2 Foundation doesn't require any experience or any prior knowledge, so you can jump in, start with your Prince2 Foundation whilst you're actually doing your experience and gathering that at a later date. So you can still study.
Absolutely.
Perfect. Thanks, Jermaine. Jermaine, this is a question for you. How can my line manager authorise the payment for me so that I don't have to pay directly online?
Oh, we can help you with that. Just get in touch with one of the guys on the web chat on our websites on either prince2.com or ilexgroup.com, or just email in to contact us at ilexgroup.com and we can help you with an invoice so that you can make payment outside of the website.
Perfect, thank you. Another one for you, Jermaine. How long is the self-paced course valid for? I registered for a Prince2 Foundation course in November with ILX and I've not done the exams yet. How long before the course is inaccessible?
So you'll have 12 months to actually complete your course and your exams. So if you log back in or speak to one of the team, they'll be able to check how long you've got left on your course for you, but you have 12 months to complete everything.
Perfect, thank you. So there's a question here around, are there any scholarships or aid available for doing Prince2? So this person said, I'm attending from where most refer to as a third world country. Are there any scholarships or aid available? I think that's probably another get in touch with the team, and we have discounts obviously available, but I don't know if we have anything else, Jermaine.
No, I don't believe we have scholarships available, but there are discounts. So if you speak to someone, they should be able to point you in the right direction for that.
Perfect, thank you. Oh, here's a wide question, possibly another webinar topic. Andy, could you on the difference between PMP and Prince2?
Right. PMP, the Project Management Professional from the PMI, is the American-based qualification that uses a body of knowledge, which is everything a project manager should know. And we'll have about 40 subjects or so in the exam. The PMP exam is 200 questions in 4 hours, closed book, with negative marking. If you get one wrong, they take a mark off you as well. So that's kind of scary. And so it's much more about that kind of broader knowledge, everything a project manager might need to know, including things like leadership and techniques and those things. Prince2 is a framework. Within the PMP, Prince2 covers something like 13, 14 of the subjects that are in the PMP, which are the basic things that a project manager needs to know, which kind of gives you an example of, if you look at a body of knowledge, it's much broader, and that's why Prince2 is not everything about project management. There's lots of other things you might need to pick up. If you have Prince2, then the UK equivalent of the PMP is called the APM's Project Management Qualification, or PMQ. If you hold the Prince2 practitioner, they give you credit for that, and therefore you can just do the things which are not in Prince2 when you add that extra bit of the qualification on. You look at all the other bits of the syllabus. So there's a UK equivalent of the PMP if you wanted one. Again, more information on our website is available on those.
Yeah, thanks. A very succinct answer to that quite broad question. So next one, if your Prince2 practitioner qualification is expired, can you still do Prince2 Agile? Jermaine?
So it depends on when you passed your Prince2 Foundation. The answer is yes, but it depends on when you passed your Prince2 Foundation. As long as that's after 2009, then yes, you can still do your Prince2 Agile practitioner. That's no problem.
Perfect. So next question, if we are not currently working on Agile and we want to proceed to Agile practitioner, except for the educational material, how can we be trained?
Do you mean like prerequisites? Sorry, Andy, you go for it.
I was going to say, it's that if as an organization you want to do the Prince2 Agile, that's perfectly fine. That would, if you give your project managers an overview of what Agile is and how Agile works. what you'd also need to have a look at is your development teams and what training they need to understand Agile and how they might build the outputs that your projects are working on in an Agile way. So PRINCE2 Agile would not be aimed at the development team. That would be things like, at Scrum or one of the other frameworks, depending on what it is you're going to do. How would I use that as a development team? So PRINCE2 Agile, remember, it's aimed at project managers, not necessarily at the development teams. So if you want to build Agile in, you've got to consider how we get that Agile knowledge in our development teams as well. I think that's my answer.
Yeah. Right, next one. I've just noticed the time, so I'm going to try and look through, see if I can round some of these up into one question. But the next one is, working in the NHS, I manage a large team, but we have a lot of new areas of service projects we need to set up. Would PRINCE2 or PRINCE2 Agile be the better option?
It depends on how you can develop those service areas. If those service areas are going to be based on an Agile development process, then kind of iterative and incremental, then PRINCE2 Agile will work perfectly. If you're going to build a service and launch it in one go in a more linear way, then PRINCE2 would be a much more appropriate qualification, because that kind of, you could start with that, and if later on you move to Agile, you could always add PRINCE2 Agile to it at that point. But look at how they're going to create those new services. Is it in an Agile or a non-Agile way? If it isn't Agile, it may not be appropriate to do PRINCE2 Agile straight away.
Cool, thank you, Andy.
Just to add to that as well, we also have an account manager here who specifically helps with NHS. So do get in touch, because she'll be able to help and guide you through that as well.
Yes, great, good point. Thank you, Jermaine. Right, there's a few questions around this, which is, so people ask, how many times can you take your PRINCE2 Foundation exam? Do you need to renew your PRINCE2 Foundation certificate? So Jermaine, can I just pass that over to you to answer? You've already covered it a little bit, I think. Yeah,
you can retake your PRINCE2 Foundation exam if you did happen to fail it the first time. You'll likely have to pay for a new exam for that. What's the other part of it? Expires. The PRINCE2 Foundation doesn't expire. PRINCE2 Practitioner you will have to retake every 3 years, but PRINCE2 Foundation, no, doesn't expire.
Cool. So yeah, if you say, I think this is correct, if you did your PRINCE2 Foundation after 2009, then you're good. That will last you.
You're good.
Yeah. And that's particularly now, because from PRINCE2 2009 onwards, all the necessary components to work in an Agile environment are already in PRINCE2. Some of the earlier versions of PRINCE2 may not have had that in. Clearly, if you've done a PRINCE2 since then it's just adding whatever information you need in terms of Agile working.
Perfect. Right. So do you need, we've covered this one as well, do you need any work experience to take either of the exams, or is it standalone? But no, they're both shaking their heads. You don't need experience to do that. PRINCE2, I think we agree, is an entry-level qualification to project management. So really good place to start. What else have we got? Sorry, more foundation questions. So I think we've gone all over that. I'd like to make a career change into project management. Which course would you recommend? Is the certification recognised in South Africa?
Yes, well, I've certainly trained people in South Africa on open courses. We've had people from South Africa either in London who happen to have done it, or when we've been in virtual courses for the last 2 years, we've had people from South Africa on there. Again, it's down to the organisation, how they heard of it, do they like consistency? But I do know that we have trained a number of people from that part of the world in PRINCE2. It's usually the organisation requirement rather than formal qualifications being recognised.
Cool. Thanks, Andy. And we still on our website, we do have a South African website where you'll see prices in local currency, and you'll see some course. I believe we've got virtual courses running there as well, classroom courses possibly. Right. Okay, this is another bit of an open-ended one, but apart from passing the exam, how confident will I be managing a project once I understand and pass PRINCE2?
Again, remember, PRINCE2 is a framework. It doesn't automatically make you a brilliant project manager. If you've led some projects in the past, what it will provide you with is a structure to be confident against. To go, I'm doing the things that I need to do. I've got the right kind of components in place. You will still need to add your kind of negotiation and leadership and teamwork skills and communication skills to make all of that work. But it should give you that sense of confidence of, here are some of the core things I need to make sure this project is doing.
That's great. Thanks, Andy. And then, I think this is one final question. I think I've covered everything. If I haven't, sorry, I had a lot of questions come through. So if I haven't asked your question and you're still on the line, please do get in touch with the team via the website. So like Jermaine said, either through the chat or drop us an email at contact@ilxgroup.com and we will be able to answer your question. But this is the final one, I think. Well, now I've lost it. Keep moving. Are the foundation exams open book?
No.
Good, in unison. So no. Foundation. So all our foundation courses, like the cost of the course includes the manual, and it's very useful to have the manual while you're doing the course. But all the foundation exams are closed book. It's the practitioner exams that are open book that you will need to use the manual.
Exactly.
And again, people asking about recording of the webinar. Yes, it will be available. It'll be sent to you on Wednesday. Or you can check out our YouTube channel. It should be live on there this afternoon. But I can't give you a time at the moment because it's technology dependent. I believe that is everything. There's a lot of thank yous in here as well from people saying thank you for the presentation. So I think that's it from us since we're now nearly at 1:20. So thank you very much, Andy and Jermaine, for your time. And we will hopefully see you all on the next webinar.
Thank you very much for listening, folks.
Thank you, guys.
Bye.
Bye-bye.